Welcome to Travel Tales, a mini-series within Distress to Joyful Bailey's Way podcast. I'm your host, Bailey Raber, here to travel the world with you. In each episode, you'll hear firsthand how my travel experiences have gone, both within the United States and abroad. Together, we'll discover new cultures, learn about a variety of new places for you to go out and explore, bring light to how I navigate my bipolar disorder while traveling, and, most importantly, we'll have fun. You'll leave each episode stocked full of exciting new ideas, interesting information, and feeling like it's time to hop on a plane. So come on, friends, let's start exploring. Hello, friends. Welcome back. I'm so excited. We are going to the Grand Canyon today. So if you're on YouTube, you're seeing me throw the postcard in front of my fucking face right now. So funny story, I was looking for the postcard just now because like I said, I keep one from every single trip I go on. And normally I write about the trip on the back, and if you're on YouTube, you can see it's fucking blank. I didn't actually have a Grand Canyon postcard in my stack of postcards over here. I have no idea what happened. My thoughts are, A, when we moved back in August, it got lost somewhere. It's somewhere else in the house. Who fucking knows? Or B, I literally just didn't write on it yet because this is the last Grand Canyon postcard I have, meaning I mailed all the others out. So I think this might actually be mine, but yeah, so sorry, no little snippet this time. Moving forward, we will have those. I literally found another set of like 6 different postcards from different places I've been to in the last 2 years that I have not written on the back. So guess what your girl's going to do before bed tonight? Fill some postcards out. Okay, so I have titled this episode about this trip, a gratifying trip to the Grand Canyon. And I say that because this was a trip that was planned very last minute and ended up being so fucking awesome. Like, the Grand Canyon's been on my bucket list since I was a kid. If you grew up in the U.S., then it was probably on your list too. It's something we learned about in school growing up and shit. Also, as a Girl Scout, if you were in Scouts, then this is probably definitely on your bucket list too, because hiking and all that nonsense. I enjoy it. It's not nonsense. Anyways, we planned this like 2 months before we went. It ended up being Memorial Day weekend of 2021. So funny thing, Monish was planning a trip with his boys to Florida. The girls weren't allowed. Me and Poonam were not allowed to come. It was not very nice. So I was texting with my friend Maddie, and she was wanting to go to the Grand Canyon. And I said, well, hey, what are you doing Memorial Weekend? And she was like, nothing. I was like, want to go to the Grand Canyon then? Because Monish is leaving, and I'm not about to sit my ass at home while he's off having fun with the boys. And she was like, fuck yeah, let's do it. We got really lucky. Because I think we only paid $200 round trip for the flight, which is super, super cheap. And also, we found some awesome lodging that was also super cheap. We really didn't spend a whole lot of money on, the most expensive parts, which is lodging and flights. The rental car did cost quite a bit. They were kind of low on them back at this time, but everything else was cheap, so we just kind of waited out, and we split everything 50-50. So speaking of lodging, let's talk about that first. So with the creation of sites such as Airbnb, the opportunity for experiencing a unique place to stay has become incredibly affordable. While it may seem a little odd when first booking a stay in someone else's home, it's definitely worth doing. On my trips, I've always stayed in adorable little cabins, beautifully themed beach houses, and remote RVs where city lights aren't around to block the star-filled night sky. So on this particular trip, we stayed in, yep, you guessed it, an adorable RV in a remote area just outside of Williams, Arizona. So before you think, nah, I'll pass on staying in an RV, I really encourage you to keep listening as I tell you more about this RV because it was beyond worth it. So, the name of the RV that we stayed in was Dottie. Yes, these people named their RV, which kind of added to the cuteness of it. And Dottie was built in the 1970s. So, her exterior was a beautiful teal with white polka dots, making her super easy to spot when driving down the pathway. And her interior was decorated with frilly pillows and gorgeous colors. There were bunk beds in there, and they were perfect for just the two of us, and the kitchen was equipped with the tools we needed for the few meals that we actually made in the RV during our stay. So Dottie was located 45 minutes south of the South Rim entrance of the Grand Canyon National Park. It was 15 minutes north of Williams, Arizona, and about 45 minutes west of Flagstaff, Arizona, which really made it the ideal location because it gave us plenty of options for things to do. And also her remote location, guys, when I say remote, like BF fucking E, like Breaking Bad, middle of the desert, fucking nowhere type shit, which might sound a little creepy, but hear me out. So she was off in the middle of nowhere. You drive down this path, like you're on the road, you're on a fucking road, and then you turn on this small road, like a highway goes to a small road, and then you go down a fucking dirt path. And you go through there and you see just little RVs all kind of like spread out. They're not near each other, but there's nothing blocking you from each of their views. And we went down a ways and we got to our RV, which had a water tank connected to it. And I guess it had solar panels. That's what got the electricity. I'm not really quite sure. I really should know this, but I don't. So at nighttime though, guys, holy fucking shit. I saw the sky like I've never seen it before. We're in Arizona in the fucking desert. There's nothing around us. In the distance, there's some little mountain thingies, but that's it. So when nightfall fell, we could see the Milky Way, which I'd never seen before. We could see the constellations. We saw the motherfucking moon rise, y'all. We saw the moon rise. I didn't even know that was a thing. Look it up. Moonrise. Yeah. So it was really cool and really special. And had we stayed in a hotel somewhere, we wouldn't have gotten that. So it really added to the experience. Oh, also, I witnessed 2 different shooting stars. Like, holy shit. Like, I've never seen shooting stars, and I saw 2 of them out there on this trip. Like, that's another bonus brownie points from this. So I will be honest, staying in Dottie was very much a, quote, glamping experience like they talked about and listed on their Airbnb listing. We had to turn the water on with a switch before it came out of the faucets. The stove was gas, which required lighting with a lighter. And the toilet flushed, that's air quotes, flushed into a tank. So this was nothing new to me as I spent kindergarten through 12th grade in Girl Scouts, but it might be a little uncomfortable for someone who's never done any kind of camping before. So before choosing to book something like this, I recommend that you do your research and ensure that you'll be fully prepared for your experience. But y'all, the best part about this stay was the cost. I am big, so big on getting the best bang for my buck. You guys really should know this by now. And Dottie most definitely hit the hammer on the nail with that. So the total price for our 5-day, 4-night stay in Dottie was exactly $400.78. And that included the cleaning fee, the service fee, and any taxes that were also associated with it. So we barely paid $200 each to fucking stay in this for 4 nights. Name a hotel where you can get 4 nights for $400. Name a hotel right now. That's not a motel. Motels do not fucking count. I can see you. I see your little brain twirling. Stop that. So the Grand Canyon National Park, another thing that I recommend is to be more than just a, quote, tourist. So I'm not going to lie, this trip was Maddie's idea because she wanted to hike inside the Grand Canyon. I had never even explored that idea at all, really, not at all, before she mentioned it. So while I love nature and exploring the great outdoors, Before this trip, I hadn't had much involvement with hiking outside of a few simple hikes here in Texas. So the great news is that there are maps posted all over the Grand Canyon National Park that show the experience levels of hiking routes available. So you can just choose the one that best fits your current skill level. So, besides giving us much better views, choosing to hike the Grand Canyon instead of viewing it from above empowered us and made us feel like total fucking badasses. Like, seriously. I mean, how cool do you think it would feel to say, yeah, I hiked in the Grand Canyon? I went down in that bitch. Like, seriously. It was definitely no small feat, yet it's not necessarily as difficult as it may sound. So there was the first, well, let me start over. The first day we went to the Grand Canyon Park, because we went twice, we went to a very simple hike. Like, people were walking in jeans and flip-flops on this hike. Like, that's how easy it was. And it was down half a mile. We could have gone more, but we stopped at the half a mile point and then right back up. And it was all paved very smoothly. It was very easy to see. People were out of breath and like throwing up and shit, but I think they weren't used to maybe altitude changes, because that is something, altitude sickness is definitely something to keep in mind when going down and up the Grand Canyon. But yeah, like, that was really small and really simple. I'll get to the other hike later, because that's another story that just give me a little bit and we'll dive on into that. But a couple important tips to keep in mind when you're planning your hike. So the first thing is ensure that you have proper footwear. So when choosing a hiking shoe, it is much better to purchase one in person versus online. So I bought a super great pair from Whole Earth Provision, where an associate actually helped me pick out a pair that not only fit me perfectly, and they had me try it out like on a ramp. So when I was going up and down to make sure it didn't slide and that it fit the way it was supposed to. But they also picked a shoe that was great for the location, because apparently there are certain types of hiking shoes depending on what type of terrain you're on. Like, I was obviously in a desert. I told him Grand Canyon, so we got dry hiking boots. But there are also a such thing as wet hiking boots. So a couple months later, when I went to Washington State to visit my sister, we didn't go hiking because I only had dry hiking boots, and it was January in Washington State. There's fucking snow everywhere. You have to have wet hiking boots. Otherwise, your foot's going to be soaking wet from all the snow, and your toes are going to freeze and turn green and break off. Okay, maybe it's not that serious, but you get the point. You get the gist. Another thing is to make sure that you pack appropriate clothing. Geez. So it's safe to assume that it gets even more hot as you descend down into the canyon. So you'll want to wear breathable clothing, but less isn't necessarily more in this climate. Because there's a little shade, a hat and sunglasses are basically a requirement, and you'll want to be sure to cover up your arms, your chest, and your back to avoid sunburns. So literally, guys, there is hardly any shade the entire time, and had I not had a hat, my face would have been like beet red. It would have been so bad. Also, don't forget to pack sunscreen if you are sunburn prone like me, like I just fucking mentioned. That's super important too. Another thing that you definitely want to get and bring with you is a camelback so that you can stay hydrated. So a camelback is basically a backpack that has a big ass, like, not a zipper, but like a pouch, a big ass pouch that you fill with water. And then there's the tube that you just put in your mouth. And so you just drink water from your backpack. It's really cool. It's kind of like those weird soda hats that they had on cartoons when I was a kid. You know what I'm talking about? Like, it's like a baseball helmet and there's a soda on each side and there's straws down and you drink it. Or a beer, whatever, cartoons. So I had never had a camelback before, even in all my days of hiking in Girl Scouts. So I found one at Walmart, which is an off-brand and expensive version of a camelback. And it costs like $20. So you definitely want to take that and fill it up and make sure that you bring enough water for how long you are hiking. Guys, there are tools for this. You are hiking in the desert. So there are tools that will tell you how long your hike is, how much water you need to bring along. Because I made the mistake of not planning well enough and I didn't bring enough water with me. I didn't. I had my Camelback which was like a liter of water, and then one other water bottle that I put a hydration tablet in, and that was it. And I was done before we got back. And the second hike that we went on was 7 fucking miles, y'all. Just wait. Just wait till I get to that. So I actually have in the travel article, I've got a link where you can learn about how much water you need based upon your hike. So if you are looking to plan this, dude, check out this article because it is stocked full of all kinds of links and written information that I am speaking to you about right now. Speaking of hydration tablets, that is something that you also want to look into. So in Camp Gladiator, I learned about the importance of hydration, and I learned about Nuun tablets. They're Nuun. And they're just little hydration tablets. You break them off and stick them in your water bottle. 0 sugar. I like them because of that. And they're very easy and portable. So that's what I took with me. But Gatorade, that shit, guys, that doesn't count. That's not hydration tablets. The Liquid IV, that could work. You might want to check the sugar content, though, because that's also an issue. But those are also really fucking expensive. Y'all, these Nuun tablets are like $6 or $7 for 10 of them. Versus those Liquid IV ones are like 20 for like 10, which is absurd. So definitely look into some kind of hydration thing to take with you because you'll need that too. So make sure you start early in the morning to avoid overheating. The early bird gets the worm and avoids a heat stroke. Okay, so maybe that's not exactly how the saying goes, but this should be taken very seriously when hiking in the desert, especially if you're there anytime near the summer months. Also, I think there is a time of year, I mean, don't quote me on this, I might be wrong, but I think there's a time of year where they don't like people to hike certain distances into the Grand Canyon because it's just too fucking hot. Again, I could be wrong, but do your fucking research before you head out there to do that. Oh, speaking of, plan your trip during the right time of the year. So the Grand Canyon has seen a spike in number of visitors lately, and lately is as of the fall of 2020 when I wrote this article. So my opinion is that the COVID-19 lockdown has inspired people to get out and explore more since we're no longer stuck in our homes. And with that said, the National Park Service website has an article where they talked about busy season tips. And again, the link to that is in my travel article notes. You can also find more information on the government website, which is in there too. I don't think I really needed to say that here, but nuggets for you to remember for later. Here's a really important thing. Use park maps to it. Use the park maps to your advantage and pick hikes that are in your current level. So this is definitely where we made some mistakes. So let me tell you about this 7-mile hike. So first of all, we both did not do our homework or any research on these trails before we decided to go out there. And due to this, on the second day when we got out there early in the morning, we chose a trail that was a total of 7 miles. And the first mile or so, it was a little bit more than a mile, was so fucking steep, y'all. Like, it was almost like straight down. It was like whoosh, so fucking steep. And that was rough. But making it down was not that big of a deal. It was a little rough because also the path was like super fucked up and jagged. You have to kind of like climb over some like rocks that these rocks aren't very tall. Most of them weren't taller than my knees, but still you're having to like climb and like navigate around all of this as you're hiking down. It's not the easiest. It's definitely not for the faint of heart. But the worst part is that when you're done and you want to leave, you have to hike up that mile. And that was something that we both really did not take into consideration when going down. Yep, Not at all. So I was okay to do all of this because I engage in HIIT workouts on a regular basis. And that's with Camp Gladiator, like I mentioned just a few minutes ago. But my friend who was with me, she kind of struggled a little bit because she just didn't work out as intensely as I do on a regular basis. So this wasn't easy. It really wasn't. It wasn't super difficult for me because again, like I'm exercising like crazy all the time, but for her because she's not, it was not the easiest. So had we taken the time to do a little research, we could have picked a trail that was a little bit easier and more pleasant. But I will say that this was a fucking beautiful hike. Oh my God, it was so beautiful. Make sure that you go watch the video on YouTube and you'll see all of the views. Fucking gorgeous because we went down and then we kind of like went a little flat and then we started to go up a little bit more. God, when we went up a little bit more, we were like walking on the edge of a cliff. We had like maybe a foot between going downward and the wall of the canyon next to us. Like it was a little intense at some points, not gonna lie. I wasn't super fond of it. I don't have a fear of heights, but I don't like the idea that I could take one wrong step and fall over. So, yeah, but it was really beautiful, totally worth it. It was fun. We enjoyed it. We got to spend a lot of time talking because we went 3.5 miles in and then 3.5 miles out. Also, y'all, there was a moment where we were kind of near the edge of like, it was kind of like a corner edge of a cliff. I've got some beautiful photos that we took there. I was taking some of Maddie, she took some of me, and we were walking back to leave to start getting out of the canyon. There was a motherfucking snake. And I saw it. I don't think Maddie saw it first. I'm pretty sure I saw it first and I alerted her of it. And this bitch takes off running. And I screamed at her, guys. I fucking screamed. Like, don't run. Oh my God. Because here's the thing. I was a Girl Scout. So as a Girl Scout, I learned that if there's a snake, you don't run. Because what happens when little mice run, snakes think that they are food. And so they go after them like that. And so if you run, they're going to think you're their prey and they're going to attack you. Because I don't think, again, don't quote me, I don't think that snakes can actually fully see you. I think it's like the infrared shit where they just see something moving. I think. Now I'm going to have to Google this later because I really want to know. But I remember just like yelling, and so she stopped running, and then the snake disappeared. But God, that was so scary because I was like afraid that she was going to get bit. I just was like walking away like calmly until she started running, and then I started to panic. And you know, when one person panics, everybody panics. Everybody was fine. It was no big deal. But like, fuck, that was a crazy experience. And also, you couldn't really tell because it was very close color to the ground. And obviously, that's so it doesn't get picked up by hawks and birds and shit. It's its own camouflage to save itself. But geez, you've got to watch out for snakes, and you really should. You really should take the time to learn what kind of wildlife is out there before you get deep into the brush like we did. Again, we were 3.5 miles in. Nobody was near us. Nobody was near us. We passed another group of hikers right when we got down that first mile, maybe about a quarter mile in. We saw a group of people. Well, we saw a couple. It was two people. And we talked for them for a minute. And then that was it until we were coming back. We were about half a mile or so in from the 3.5 out when we passed another couple who were going where we were going. And then we didn't see anybody else until we got to the bottom of that steep ass mile up. So had she got bitten by a snake, that would have been fucking awful. We had no service out there either, guys. Our phones had no service. So this seriously is something that we should have looked into. We should have looked into what wildlife was around, what to look out for, what to make sure we don't get bitten by, what to do if we do get bitten by this shit. Like, these are things we didn't do that we just got lucky. We really just did get lucky. But don't play with luck like that, guys. Don't fucking play with luck like that. Because now that I'm sitting here talking to you about this, I'm like, fuck, we should have done better. So don't make those mistakes like we did, seriously. So here are some additional tips for the Grand Canyon National Park. Number one, choose to watch the sun rise over the Grand Canyon instead of the sun set. So most people find that staying to watch the sunset is easier and more appealing, but it tends to be super overcrowded and hard to find a good viewing spot at this time. Therefore, I seriously recommend waking up before dawn and making it into the park before the sun rises, as it's equally a magical experience, although a lot more comfortable. So we prepared our clothing and our snacks the night before. We went to bed super fucking early, and we got up at like 4 a.m., y'all, so that we could make this happen. So depending on what time of year you visit, the sunrise is going to occur at different times. So just check the estimated sunrise before you plan to go. Like, literally just check the day before. That's the best time. Bring plenty of snacks. Number one tip. Really, seriously. From Hangry Bales over here, number one tip. So as you might expect, most national parks don't have restaurants. Although I was very surprised to learn that the Grand Canyon National Park actually has a few. What the fuck? Yet, most of them are only open for certain times of the day. A lot of them are grab and go only types of places with pre-prepared food items. So with that said, modifications can't be done with that kind of shit. And this could possibly create a sticky situation for picky eaters or people like me with specific dietary needs. I'm a vegetarian. So again, I got lucky because we went into some little store. It was called the Bright Angels Bike and Cafe coffee shop. So we went in there for a sandwich, and they actually had a vegetarian wrap. It had like hummus and a bunch of random vegetables thrown together. I'm a picky eater. Didn't think I was going to like it. I actually did like it. It was cold and really refreshing and tasted good. That hike was killer. We burned over 1,000 calories, maybe more in that hike. So again, I got lucky, but don't rely on these places. Make sure to bring your own lunch, your own snacks, especially if you're planning to hike. And then if you want to check it out and there's something you want to eat instead, then boom, you're still set. You're good to go. But don't rely on these. I think there is like a 5-star or like fancy ass restaurant that's only open in the evenings, because like apparently people like get married it there and shit. Like, I didn't do any research. Obviously, I had no fucking idea what I was walking into. Don't be like Bailey. Do your fucking research and your homework. So I actually have a link in the travel article that has an entire list of all the restaurants and even little general stores located throughout the park. So that's a little cool piece of little nugget for you to hold on to for later. Oh, and my final tip, not my final tip, but another important tip is do your research. So there are all kinds of things that you can find on the website. There's like the Grand Canyon Park has a website through the National Park something, like NPS, National Park Society. I don't fucking know. Again, it's in the travel article. But we didn't do our research. So remember that 7-mile hike I was talking about? 7-mile hike I was talking about? Well, we went 3.5 miles in because we heard of this spot on the trail called Dripping Springs. So we're seeing it on the map, and we're trying to pick which hike we want to do based upon the hiking map that's just, they're everywhere. If you're in a little area that has the restrooms and shit, there's going to be hiking maps all over the place. Also, fun fact, there's a bus system to get you to different hiking points. If you can't hike, the bus system also takes you to different viewing points too, and a lot of these viewing points will then go down into hiking points, and that's what we did. So we saw Dripping Springs, and we're like, that sounds really fucking cool. That sounds like a great place to go. It's hot outside. We're going to hike to it. This is going to be badass. We're going to have lunch next to this little waterfall. Like, how fucking cool. I didn't know there was a waterfall on the Grand Canyon, did you? No, it's called Dripping Springs. Let's fucking go. So we decided to go on Hermit Trail because that's the one that takes you towards Dripping Springs. Y'all, we hiked that mile down. We hiked that flat terrain. We hiked up on that ledge. We went around the corner and we found Dripping Springs, and guess what? It is literally water dripping one drop at a time into a giant puddle on the fucking floor of the Grand Canyon. I shit you not. That is it. That is all Dripping Springs inside the Grand Canyon is. We got there and we were so fucking disappointed. We were hot. We were thinking we were going to like stick our feet in this springs and sit under the waterfall and have a grand old time. No. It was nasty water too. There were bugs flying all around it. It was fucking disgusting. It was so gross. And I had to pee so bad. By the time we got there, I just went on the corner and just fucking peed in the bushes because nobody was fucking there. Because everybody else did their homework and they knew that this was not a waterfall and we were the rookies just trying to think that we are so cool finding this springs in the middle of, the fucking desert of the Grand Canyon. God. It makes for a funny story now because, yeah, we were idiots and we didn't do our research. But, at the time, I was so pissed. I was so fucking pissed. I hiked in the sun. I ran out of water. I really did. I ran out of water about halfway back. And all I got was nasty smelling water with bugs all around it. And that was it. Oh, what was cool, though, when we got there was some rustling sound, which obviously freaked us out because it's just me and her. We're like, what the fuck is that sound? Could be anybody. Could be a fucking serial killer. Could be a murderer. I don't know. I look over. There's some kind of deer out there. But the deer had these short, fuzzy antlers. And so they were like reindeer antlers. But short. They weren't super tall. If you're on YouTube, you can kind of see. And they were super fuzzy. And it was strange. And it stared at us. And I thought it was going to run at us and attack us. But it didn't. It just ran away. So that was interesting. I mean, that kind of made it cool. And then this makes for a funny story. But yeah, moral of the story, do your fucking research. Also, fun fact, that hike back in, remember I said we got out there and about half a mile back we passed by another couple? They were also going to Dripping Springs. They were probably about our age, maybe a little younger. It was a girl and a guy. And we told them, we were like, it's really not much. You're going to be disappointed, but you're already here. You might as well make it there. And so we pointed them in the direction. They're like, oh, okay, thanks. So we weren't the only rookies making that mistake. So that did feel a lot better, I will say. I felt a lot better about that. So when you are heading out towards the Grand Canyon, if you're there for longer than just a weekend, explore the surrounding areas. So the Grand Canyon is great and all, but there's also some small towns around to where if you don't want to spend, 4 days hiking like we didn't want to do, then go check out some other things out. So I love exploring little towns and cities and other states and other countries. I think it's really fascinating and I love to talk to people and learn about things. So the first town that we chose to explore was Williams, Arizona. So on our way into this adorable little town, we saw a motel on the side of the road, which had a massive Fred Flintstone character, along with his little prehistoric car. Guys, we could not resist stopping for a photo shoot, because this setup reminds me of rest stops for 2000s movies, when they're on a road trip and they're going to stop and stay in this hotel overnight. That's what that reminded me of. The last Travel Tales episode, the first one, number 1, when I went to New Mexico and I went and saw the largest pistachio, same vibes. And this happened first. Pistachio came second. So obviously I'm into this weird shit. It was cool though. So we did stop. We took a bunch of photos. You can see that in the YouTube video. But when we got into Williams, we realized that there's not a whole lot to do. So fun fact, it's along historic Route 66, so that was pretty neat. There was a couple of little touristy, take some photos type things that you could do for free. But this town had less than 5,000 people in it. So, in just a couple hours' time, we were able to explore all of the shops and eat some food and do the historic sites and have some ice cream and then call it a day. Like, it was really quick, really easy. They also have this little, like, zip line type thing that you could do, which I think was a total waste of money. That's why we didn't do it. But it is a cute little, like, small town USA town to check out if you're in the area. So, a little further away from our Airbnb was Flagstaff, Arizona. So, this was a much larger town with a population of over 73,000 people. And we spent a whole day there, starting the adventure by grabbing some coffee at a local coffee shop. And there were a ton of local shops there, which was super cool because I love window shopping and checking out locally owned businesses when I'm in new places. Because, guys, hello, support local. Support local. Let me scream that into you guys. So, I didn't take many pictures being in Flagstaff because by then I was just exhausted. It was the last day of our trip. I'm tired. We've done hiking. We've done a lot of driving. We did flying into Arizona. It's fucking hot as hell. But this town had a ton of murals all over it. So if you, like me, love to have your photo taken, or if you just like to take photos of cool things, Flagstaff has murals all over. So I'm sure you could actually find an article that would tell you where all of them are located, or you can just make your own little scavenger hunt, because that would be fun too. But while we were in Flagstaff, we met the owners of a sewing shop who do like sewing classes, and they were from Scotland, which is so fucking cool. And we chatted with them for probably at least half an hour or longer. And this is before I even started college. So it was really, really cool to talk to somebody whose daughter was working at the Met. Like, she was a costume designer for, I think she was for something, maybe the New York Ballet, and then she would design costumes for the Met Gala, or not costumes, beautiful garments, all kinds of things. I think the costumes were for the ballet. I'm not 100% sure. It's been a while, y'all. Give me some grace. But it was really neat. We got to talk to some people, figure out why the hell they moved to Flagstaff from Scotland, all kinds of stuff. So, before I go, I have something I want to show you guys on YouTube. Now, I mentioned I'm not a big souvenir person, as, I mean, I'd rather spend money on experiences and food and that kind of thing, even though I'm sure you can see that shelf in the corner up there that's got some shit sitting on it. But one thing I do like to collect is small trinkets. I literally have a shelf up here that I'll post a photo of one day called my international shelf, where every little trinket on that shelf is from a different country. It's not from the US. And so, like, I've got, I'll show you right here, my hati, which means elephant in Hindi. So my hati, this is from Monish's hometown in Baroda, Gujarat, India. Gujarat. I think I pronounced that right the first time. I don't really know. But yeah, this is the kind of stuff that I collect. Just something like, this is obviously from India, you can tell. But what's special about it is that it's embroidered, which is a huge thing in Monish's hometown and in his home state, Gujarat. Gujarat is known for embroidery, beautiful embroidery like this. So that's why I got this. Also, I love elephants and I love pink. It's super lightweight. It was cheap and it just sits on my shelf and looks really cute and reminds me of my time to India. So while we were at the Grand Canyon, I found this. It's a cute little, it's like literal rocks from the Grand Canyon that they just like glued together and wrote Grand Canyon on. I mean, granted, I probably could have made this myself. So if you want to just steal some rocks while you're there and do it, go for it. These are obviously polished though, and so there's the plus side to that. But yeah, so this is one little thing that I brought for myself besides the postcard that I will fill out as soon as I sign off. And guys, what I learned about myself on this trip. Number one, do your fucking research and plan ahead. Big time. Food was kind of an issue. We were not good at that. I was still kind of learning. I've gotten so much better ever since, but food is always still something I really have to make sure that I plan ahead of time. Number 2, I learned that when you go on a trip with somebody else, there's got to be compromises. So on our last day, my friend, she wanted to go to Horseshoe Bend, which was, I think, in Sedona, Arizona, which was like a 2-hour drive from where our Airbnb was. And here's the thing. She refused to drive while we were there. It scared her, and honestly, I didn't want her driving anyways because she would text while driving, and that scared me. And so we just kind of set it to where I would be the driver all the time. So that was the compromise. I'll drive, and she'll just get to chill and be on her phone or whatever. Because some of these places, again, it took 45 minutes to an hour to get to. So the compromise with me being the driver all the time is that she wanted to go to Sedona. And I said, Maddie, like, I can't do that. That's a 2-hour drive there, a 2-hour drive back. Tomorrow morning, we get on a plane and go back to Austin, Texas, where I then have to drive back to Houston. Girl, that's too much. I can't do that. I'm already exhausted. And we had to drive from our Airbnb, which is like 2 hours, down to Phoenix first to get to the airport. That was a lot. And so together, we both had to make compromises. This was something she wanted to do that she decided, okay, that's fine. She made the compromise that we weren't going to do that. We would spend the day in Flagstaff instead, which again was only a 45-minute drive, because I was the only one driving. So there was give and take. We both had to compromise somehow. And so for me, this was a really eye-opening experience because this was the first trip that I went on that was not with Monish, but that was with a friend in, God, fucking years. Like, this is the first friend trip I went on in years. And so when I'm with Moni, it's easy, y'all. It's so easy. This motherfucker is so chill. If I want to do something, we're going to do it. And if I want to change something last minute, we'll fucking change something last minute. Like, Moni is so chill and down to earth. If you've ever met him, you know this to be true. So now that I'm on a trip without Moni, first time with somebody else on a trip in a long time, I had to learn to compromise, just like she was having to compromise. And so this was a huge thing. And this is really important to understand if you're going to go on a trip with somebody who is not your significant other or not your family. But even with family, though, you still might have to compromise. Anytime you're traveling with others, guys, compromisations, I don't know if that's a real word, but I used it anyways. I'm going to say it confidently again, so maybe you'll believe me. Compromisations are important. Like, you have to compromise. If it's a solo trip, do whatever the fuck you want. But when you're with other people, you've got to be considerate of them, just like they should be considerate of you. So I hope that you have enjoyed this grand trip with me to the Grand Canyon. Once again, here's the postcard for y'all on YouTube. But until next time, take it easy, stay grateful, and be joyful. Bye! Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Travel Tales. Head on over to whatishaybellsdoing.com/travel to find the resources mentioned in today's episode. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a rating on your favorite listening platform or write a review on Apple Podcasts. Also, don't forget to hit the subscribe button to stay up to date on new episode releases. See you next time for another great adventure. Bye!